It's now taken me 1 hour and 50 minutes. I've got both brake calipers back on. I've constructed a new copper brake pipe here, and I did that by copying exactly the old one which I had kept. So there was the old one, and you can see I've used it to make the new one, so I know it's going to clear everything. And space is a little bit tight on all these parts, so make sure you do it accurately. I've got one old pipe here, I'm going to replace that next. Now I'm going to put the brake pads in there, and that is very easy while the that is very easy, and that is very easy while the axle is out of the car. And the second one, that's it, the pin goes in from this side. Now, one thing that people suggest is that you put a bit of this copper grease on the back of the pads, and just putting a smear there helps prevent any brake squeal. So that's a little tip that might be worth doing. But as you can see here on these pads, they already have a little rubber piece there which is doing that same job. Once I've put these ones in here, it shouldn't take a minute, I'm going to construct that brake pipe, and then I'm going to fit the handbrake pads and then put the shock absorbers back on, and that will be this job finished and the axle ready to go back in the car. Good morning, I'm David Pengilly, and the next job I'm going to show you on the Jaguar independent rear suspension is how to change the handbrake pads. It's quite a complicated job. It can be done through the access panels inside the car without removing the whole cage, but it's much easier when the cage is off, so now's the time to do it. So this is the handbrake mechanism. It has two pads, and here it has an actuator lever which pulls them together. Now I don't want to pull that at this time because it has a self-compensator or adjuster in there, and it will ratchet, click 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 click, and close those pads up together, and there's no brake disc in there in the middle, and I'll struggle to get them on. So anyway, to remove the pads and replace them, you have to undo these small bolts on the back and slide the pads out. This one is more difficult, and it involves taking out the split pin here and that rod, and then you can pull it to the side and get at this nut that's on the back. So you put your new pads on. You have to make sure that you get them the right way round because they're handed. And here's the top of the cage, and so this is the part that you can see if you do it from inside the car through the access panel. And these are fitted through the hole in the top of the cage, and they slide into a recess in the caliper. There we go, that's it in. So I have to tell you that if you can't see what you're doing here, none of this stuff is easy, but if you can see it, it's just about possible. So that handbrake mechanism is held in place by these two bolts, a spring, and this spring forces the pads back off the disc after you've applied the handbrake and when you release it. And then there's a lock washer. Now if there's any problem with the old lock washer, you should really replace it, but they're quite difficult to come by, so mine looks pretty good. I'm using it again, and you can see there's 4 tabs on it. There was only ever two that have been used in the past, so I shall use the other 2. Okay, now I put a bit of copper slip on those threads. These are the bolts that hold the handbrake mechanism in, and that will stop it from locking up in the future if I ever have to get it off again, and it also makes it a little bit easier to screw it in. Right, so there you can see the lock tab washer, and then the spring. That's the part we've got to fit in. Right. Now, right, let's give it a little tap. Got it. Okay. Now, even though it might look like I've got that on, the forks, that little spring that's inside, the legs of that have to sit inside two holes that are in the handbrake calipers there, and they appear as though they're too long, but everyone who does this job says the same thing. They always appear too long, and there's a little trick to fitting them. Right, for this job you want to see in the front side, what you have to do is you have to lift that spring, those prongs, that fork up about 20 millimeters. So there we are, look, I've lifted it up underneath the heads of those bolts. So now it's raised up, you find you can get the legs, the prongs of that spring into the holes. And I'm going to finish off tightening these up here. I'm going to fold up the tab washer, and I'm going to make sure there's no interference between this connect up actuating arm, and then that is the handbrake finish. So I hope that gives you an idea how to do it. It's not that straightforward. There is a little bit of a knack to it. You might need a small lever and a pair of pliers to get that spring in. Remember to lift it up at this end so you can push the two legs of the spring into the calipers, and then you can tap it back down and it tightens itself up before tightening it up. So my name's David Pengilly, hope that helps you. Thanks for watching.